Hi, everyone. Thank you for joining me. Let's do a quick sound check. If you guys could let me know in the comments, can you hear and see me well? Just write a thumbs up or something just so that I know that we're good to go. I can see that there's somebody from Calgary. That's awesome. Hello. Unfortunately, I cannot see the name because it's only displaying as LinkedIn user. But anyways, so please let me know in the comments if you can hear me well and see me well as well. Okay. Looks like it's working. Hello, Sophia. Hi, Carolyn. Unfortunately, there are some people who I can only see as LinkedIn users, so I'm sorry, guys, I cannot say hi to you in person. Hi, Brianna, Sonji. Thank you guys for joining. I'm glad that you can hear me well. That's awesome. So the main thing that we have on the agenda for today is for me to answer your job search and career questions. I know this is a really tough time and a lot of you are struggling. I did like a poll the other day on Instagram asking how people's job search is going, and it was kind of it was really horrendous to see that 99% of people said that they are experiencing dead silence. So that really breaks my heart. And I hope that if you have questions, I can help you figure stuff out and answer those questions today. And you can also share some knowledge or something new that you learn with your friends who are also wanting better results and struggling to figure stuff out in their career. Just a quick intro for those of you who are new and are joining me for the first time. First of all, welcome. I do these live streams quite often, every other week. So hopefully you can join in every once in a while, because there's a lot of great information that we're sharing here. We're learning together and we're helping you get hired for the job you want and deserve. My name is Anna. I'm a career coach and I work with job seekers every single day to help them market their professional stories, whether it's online like LinkedIn, on paper like their resume, or even in person, or well, nowadays it's actually mostly on video when you're doing video interviews or having conversations with connections in your network. Like I said, do these live streams every couple weeks, so feel free to follow me on LinkedIn and tune in every once in a while, and hopefully you can get a ton of value out of these regular meetups. So, like I said, the purpose of today is for me to answer your questions. So please don't be shy. Type your questions in the comments. I'll try to cover as many of them as I can. And if you don't mind, I'll start off with a couple of questions that I got in direct messages for people who didn't want to post them publicly, but they did send me those questions in advance. So I'll just answer 2 of them, and then I'll dive right into your comments. So one person asked me, what is the optimal length for a resume? And I know that that is something that a lot of people are still struggling to figure out. And every once in a while, when I work with clients, I get this question as well, because especially people who have quite a bit of experience. So if you're someone who maybe has been working for 10, 20 or more years, I'm sure that you've asked yourself at least once this question: how much information should I include on a resume? So, guys, once and for all, the length of your resume itself doesn't really matter. What matters is how much value every piece of information on your resume adds to your positioning and the message that you're trying to get across to employers. So if something on your resume does not really position you well for this specific opportunity that you're targeting, then maybe it doesn't need to be on your resume. And I know that that might sound harsh, because obviously everything that you put on your resume is personal, right? So we want to put as much information as we can. Or if we're describing a particular role, and let's say you've been part of a bunch of different exciting projects, you're really eager to show everything. And I understand that desire so much. And I know that especially when you're really eager to get a job, you feel like more information will will help you, right? It will actually work to your advantage. Unfortunately, more does not always mean better. So one thing that you need to remember is when you're writing your own resume, essentially you are your own editor. So at the end of the day, it's up to you to make those sometimes harsh decisions as to what needs to be in your resume and what doesn't. So the rule of thumb is always the following. If this piece of information, let's say this particular project or this particular role, positions you well for the job that you're currently applying for, so tailoring to every single opportunity that you're considering, in that case, yes, it is worth including that onto your resume. I know that a lot of people are somehow still trying to fit everything onto one page, thinking that 2 pages is for whatever reason really bad. I don't have, or nobody that I know has any official evidence as to why 2 pages is worse than 1. Like I said, if it's unnecessary 2 pages, so if you're just listing all kinds of information and you're not focusing on relevance, in that case, yeah, probably you don't need the 2nd page. But if there is relevant information that carries a ton of value and can really explain why you make a great fit for this specific opportunity that you're currently targeting, in that case, there's nothing to worry about and 2 pages is totally okay. I personally wouldn't go above 2 pages just because, even when the applicant tracking system does put you through and ranks you high as a relevant candidate, your resume still gets to be assessed by an actual human. And with our busy schedules and busy lives, and considering how many resumes, every company receives, it will be very unlikely that anyone would read past page 2. So keep that in mind as well, because readability is really important when it comes to making that decision whether they're going to give you a call or not, and whether they want to continue the conversation with you. So keep that in mind, that going past 2 pages is tricky. So if you can cut information down to 2 pages and focus on relevance and those key selling points that really help to differentiate you, then you have nothing to worry about. So that was the first question. And the other one that someone else sent me privately actually had to do with video interviewing. But basically, the person is asking me, when is a good time to connect with your interviewer on LinkedIn? Before the interview or after? And if there's a preference, then what is the best time to do that? So my answer is always, first of all, yes, it's definitely a good idea to connect with your interviewer on LinkedIn, because why not? That is one extra way for you to stay in touch and stay on their radar, regardless of how well your interview goes. In this case, you won't be wrong by connecting with that person on LinkedIn. I personally would recommend doing that even before the interview, but when you're reaching out to connect with the interviewer, make sure to attach a personalized note with your connection invite, letting them know, like, hey, Bob, or whatever the name of the interviewer is, I'm excited to have a conversation next week. Looking forward to learning more about your company and how I can add value to your marketing team, or something like that. I mean, that's just one example off the top of my head right now. But basically, always attach that personalized connection, like the note with your connection request, because you're increasing your chances of establishing some kind of a meaningful connection. And I feel like that could give you a great edge before the interview. So that way the interviewer is already kind of, ooh, they notice you. Perhaps they take a peek at your LinkedIn profile and they find something interesting. So that's one way how you can stand out from the crowd. But obviously, if for whatever reason you did not connect with the person prior to your interview, there is also nothing wrong with doing that afterwards. And make sure to follow up within the first 24 hours after your interview. Okay, so those were the 2 questions that people sent me privately. So now I'll just look at the comments and see what you guys have. Okay. Well, first of all, hi to everyone who is joining. That's so great to see you guys here. Okay. Okay, let's start with this one. How can I find a good positions in the oil and gas industry when all I see is low commodity prices and companies filing for bankruptcy? Unfortunately, I can't see the name of who posted that question, but that is a great question. And actually, it's valid not just for the oil and gas industry, because a lot of industries are suffering right now. And, when you're applying for jobs, it's important that you keep that in mind, because obviously it's good to get a job right now, but all of us are kind of thinking ahead and thinking, okay, what prospects do I have if I, continue working in this industry? So specifically talking about oil and gas, obviously I'm in Calgary, which is we are dominated by the oil and gas industry and have always been. And it's been really challenging to see how the industry has been suffering. But to be honest with you, it's been suffering even before COVID hit. So there are certain, obviously we're not going to dive into all of the different trends and economy and all of that, but a lot of companies are suffering. And if you are open to transitioning to a different career, I would strongly suggest that, because at the end of the day, like I said, we're also thinking ahead of time. And COVID or no COVID, the oil and gas industry is really, really volatile. So yes, it does experience some amazing highs, but it also goes through some pretty tough lows. Especially, I'm referring to the Canadian oil and gas industry, because I think it's very likely that whoever is asking that question also lives here in Alberta. So when it comes to the Canadian oil and gas industry, obviously I'm not discouraging you or, telling you to leave the industry right now. But if you want to increase your chances of staying marketable and putting your accomplishments and your skill set to good use, you can find that outside of the oil and gas industry. So obviously, going through a career change these days is tricky and it's scary and it's challenging. And actually, I will be sharing a new video on my YouTube channel soon, probably next week, for career changes specifically. So if you're not yet following me on YouTube, if you're not subscribed, please go ahead and subscribe and stay tuned for my coming videos. Like I said, next week, I'm talking about switching careers and really diving into the details of how you can do that in these challenging times. So yeah, I hope that I answered your question, but even if you're not in the oil and gas industry and your industry is really suffering, I can tell you that yes, there are general trends, and I'm not going to deny that they're not there. So obviously, we all read the news, we all follow certain trends and important developments that are happening. But I also see a lot of my clients landing jobs in those challenging industries right now. So obviously, there are certain factors that are outside of your control. But how well you position yourself and how well you sell yourself to prospective employers is also a huge factor, and that factor you can control. And I'm always a big advocate of focusing your effort and your energy on the things you can control. So like I said, if an industry is challenging or it is going through a challenging time, it doesn't mean that every company is going to go bankrupt, and it also doesn't mean that there aren't companies that are going through problems that you are good at resolving. Of course, it narrows down the pool of opportunities. So obviously, if there used to be 100 companies and now 50 of them file for bankruptcy and cease their operations, you're only left with 50 companies instead of 100. So with the same pool of candidates, you're facing much, much higher competition. But it's not impossible if you position yourself well. So if you focus on how you can add value, and if you make it really personal when you're interacting with those companies. And what I mean by that is if you really do your homework well and you research what those companies are going through, and you build that bridge between what you can offer and what that company is desperately needing right now, I can guarantee you that nothing is impossible. But also, I know that for those, who want to keep things completely realistic and think about, probabilities and chances, obviously, fewer job opportunities with the same pool of candidates means much higher competition. So if you can find a way to, again, broaden that range of opportunities that you're considering, meaning think outside of that one industry, now is the time to do that. Okay, let's see what other questions do we have. Maria is saying, hi, Anna. Happy to join. Happy to have you, Maria. Thank you so much for tuning in. Okay, here's a question from Erin. And actually, yeah, there are some people watching me on YouTube right now because I'm streaming to 2 different platforms at the same time, which is pretty cool. So Erin is asking, I would love to learn the best tips for how to cold connect with people on LinkedIn. It's so awkward. Yes, it is awkward. I'm not going to deny that. And it's one of the biggest challenges that a lot of job seekers are facing these days, because even if you are not super active at networking online, now that's your only option. So LinkedIn is a busy place these days. And I'm glad that there's so much more interest and people are really trying to understand how to network best and more productively and get rid of that awkwardness that always comes with it. So actually, again, if you go onto my YouTube channel, this week I published a video talking exactly about that, how to network without feeling awkward or intimidating. And the key, I mean, a little spoiler for those of you who haven't watched it, the spoiler is you need to start networking not just in direct messages, which is what people always think about, right? I need to message someone and ask them for something. But you need to start networking in your newsfeed openly with everybody, increasing your visibility and engaging with content on LinkedIn. Like I said, if you're curious to know more details, you're more than welcome to check out the last video on my YouTube channel. It talks exactly about that. And I dive into very specific details and even share a few actionable, easy ways how you can start engaging. So I give you directions as to what exactly you need to do. Okay, let's see what other questions we have. Question from Brianna. I hope I pronounced your name correctly. I apologize if that was not correct. What advice do you have for career gaps? Well, I'm assuming that you're mostly referring to how to reflect that on a resume. And my answer is, first of all, you have to really own it. I mean, if you had a career gap and there was a valid reason as to why you had it, it's normal. Like, we have to stop feeling guilty or whatever for taking breaks when we need to take care of our family or take care of our health. And every human being on this planet understands that. As long as you present that openly and transparently on your resume, you are increasing your chances for success. So obviously, if someone is looking at your resume at the chronology and the years, and they are seeing that there's a 2-year gap with no explanation. So they look at the education and they're like, okay, so they were not at school. They look at your, if you have volunteer experience or something like that, and they don't see any, or they see again that it's not reflected within that time frame, you raise a lot of questions, right? And those kinds of questions or confusion, that never, acts to your advantage. So if you did a 2-year gap if you had a 2-year gap in your career and you took care of your family, that's what you need to write. Like, sometimes you can just put career gap and a one-liner that explains what you were doing. So even if you were, taking care of your family or taking care of your health or whatever personal reason you had, I'm sure that you also did something that helped you to build up your skill set. So maybe you were taking some online courses or reading up on some stuff, or you volunteered somewhere, right? So if you can squeeze out any kind of activities or experience that you gained out of that gap, again, it's definitely worth highlighting on your resume, because if you are transparent with it and if you're stating the reason and you're also stating how you are still continuing to improve, to learn, and to grow, you won't need to worry about having a career gap, because a career gap does not define you. What defines you is how good you are at something and how you can add value to other businesses and help them figure stuff out. So that's what you need to worry about the most. Be transparent with your gaps and just provide honest and direct explanation as to what happened. Okay. Another question from Mohit. What's the best way to reach out and network with professionals on LinkedIn, especially if it's a cold contact? Again, I'm going to refer you to the video that I published on my YouTube channel. I talk about exactly that, connecting with people cold when you don't know them. There's a great strategy to start building that connection before you actually ask anyone for any kind of help or advice or referral or something like that. Because you need to be mindful that when you're reaching to someone new who doesn't know you, you're definitely not at the top of their list of priorities. So you need to figure out a way to start building a relationship with them. A relationship means time, effort, and consistency. So it's not like when you ask them something once, and you had one conversation of 2 messages back and forth, now you have a professional relationship that you can always rely on or go back to. It doesn't work that way. Relationships take time and they take consistency. They take regular effort. Like I said, if you want to know more, you're welcome to check out my YouTube video. I'll walk you through the details and tell you exactly what you need to do to start creating that foundation so that when you're actually reaching out to someone, it's no longer 100% cold. Okay, there is a question from Animesh. Not getting response from recruiters, and when it is coming, companies don't want to do visa sponsorship. So I'm assuming that you're applying remotely to a different country. Unfortunately, there's not much detail in your question, but obviously, I mean, COVID is definitely a huge factor there as well. So you know how challenging it always has been to apply to jobs in a country where you're not currently located. So now multiply that times 10. So unfortunately, it is pretty challenging these days. And I'm not really an immigration lawyer to advise you on visa sponsorships. But if you have more questions about it that are related to strictly job search, please feel free to reach out to me directly and we can have a conversation. Okay, question from David. What is the preference for portal review of a resume and cover letter, PDF or Word, or does it matter? That's a good question, David. Thank you. First of all, if when you're applying for a specific job, if the platform where you're doing this is giving you specific instructions, because quite often it will, and most often they require a Word document. So I would say that you can never go wrong with Word, especially when it comes to dealing with applicant tracking systems. So if you're applying to companies that are relatively big or at least mid-sized to big, so they are likely to have those systems in place, I would say that you can never go wrong with Word, but there are also a lot of systems that read PDFs as well. And one of the biggest advantages of a PDF is that if you're sending your resume directly to a human, or if you're applying to slightly smaller companies that don't necessarily have those software and other tools to help them screen through resumes, the advantage of a PDF is that you keep all your formatting in its original place. So you don't need to worry about, any kind of what version of Microsoft Word does the other person have, because sometimes those things, they shift around, unfortunately. So I would say that Word is safer in general, unless you're applying directly. And in that case, I would always go with a PDF. Although, to be fair, a lot of applicant tracking systems these days also are okay with PDF format. So, but to be on the safer side, I would go for Word, unless the instructions specify that either could work, because sometimes that's the case as well. Okay, let's see. Please give more perspective on job search strategy. Some career advisors recommend to apply online as much as possible, not less than 10 per week. The others recommend to build network, put 10 companies on the list, and contact 15 people in each company. Based on your experience, what is the best approach? That is a great question, Marie. And I'm just going to hide the question from the screen because, yeah, I think you guys can barely see me. But that is a great question, though. First of all, you know, I know that a lot of advice that you're going to read online will tell you that job search is a numbers game. And I cannot say that it necessarily isn't. But these days, when you're facing increased competition and the job market is just going completely crazy in certain areas and certain industries, there's nothing that can give you a greater return on your effort, on your time, on your investment as building your network. I mean, it's no secret that the majority of jobs get filled through networking. So even if, like, let's say that that first piece of advice in terms of numbers was true. Let's say that the people who advise you to apply to 10 jobs per week are right. Then let's ask those people, what is their advice if 10 out of those 10 postings, 9 are already filled? So that means that the majority of jobs get filled through networking, even when the job is posted. There are many different reasons why companies post job openings online, and sometimes they do it for legal reasons to prove that they did follow the procedure and the legal process and all of those things. But the reality is that they will still try to fill that job through their networks. And I think it's pretty logical, considering that in general, companies don't like taking extra risks. But imagine companies taking extra risks right now when they're facing greater uncertainty, more challenges, like all of that stuff. So these days, companies that were even used to taking risks before are no longer so open to it, which means that whenever hiring mistakes are costly, you guys. I know that, when you're always on one side of the table as a candidate, as a job seeker, that may not seem like a big deal. I mean, like, so we didn't work out, so I'm going to move on. But for the company, they invest money in you, they train you, and most importantly, I mean, they are finally thinking, wow, we found this person who will help us figure this stuff out. Let's say they have like a pressing problem in their business, and then it doesn't work out. It's just painful. And, it's challenging for companies to find the right fit. So it's logical and it's natural that they would do everything it takes to avoid those kind of hiring mistakes. So they would first go to their network and the friends of their employees and friends and partners to see if they can get a trusted referral before they ever post the job. And sometimes they would already fill the job, but you would still find an active posting online. And we're not here to criticize anybody for any kind of hiring practices. I'm not about criticizing anybody, because I've been on both sides and I know that both sides are facing challenges, even though it may not necessarily seem that way. So what about that? So what if 9 of those 10 jobs that you apply to every week have already been filled, and you've spent all that time and effort to tailor your resume, to fill out all of those lengthy questionnaires and fields where they ask you for the same information that already is on your resume? I mean, that's just a painful waste of your time. So my advice is definitely more leaning towards your second point that you mentioned, Maria, in terms of creating a target list of companies, finding people who work at those companies or used to work at those companies. Don't overlook former employees. Those guys are a great source of information. And use that to find a way around the online application process. Find a referral, or even if there is no active opening in the company right now, but that would be a great place for you to work. Like, you would add value and you would also gain value. It would be a great fit. I say start building that bridge to that company. The sooner the better. Maybe you won't join that company tomorrow or the day after tomorrow, but you never know what kind of situation they're going to be in half a year, in a year, maybe even in 2 years. So those relationships are always key, and of course, it's a long-term game. So it's not like today I talked to 10 people and I necessarily got 10 job offers. I mean, that would be great. Unfortunately, it doesn't always work that way. So my advice is focus on networking. That is also something that I talk a lot about in my posts, in my videos. So if you are not actually following me on LinkedIn, please do, and check out my recent posts. I talk a lot about networking and how you can leverage that in your job search. And I also did a couple of videos on it as well. So if you haven't been to my YouTube channel yet, now is the time. Okay. Another question by Animesh. As mentioned by many experts, recruiters take 6 to 10 seconds to go through the resume. How to make it efficient for that short period of time to get selected? That is a great question, and that could be a topic for like a whole 1 hour conversation alone. So I'm going to be quick. The number one tip is, again, focus on relevant information, because you know that it only takes seconds to evaluate whether you do make a good fit for this opportunity or not. So use your resume to, first of all, to push the most relevant information forward, because everybody will start reading at the top, whether it's the summary at the top or the top of the list of your core skills and qualifications, or whatever you call that, or the top, so the most recent roles in your experience. So already when we're going into your career path. So make sure that the most relevant information appears at the very top. Also, like I said, more doesn't always mean better. So in that case, be concise. And if you can say something with fewer words, go for it. The other thing is you want to keep an eye on your formatting, because if you jam pack a lot of information into one lengthy, huge paragraph, nobody will like that, and it will not be convenient to make that kind of a call in 6 seconds. So you want to break that down into smaller, more digestible chunks of information so that it's easier for the human eye to screen through. There's a whole bunch of other tips and little tricks that you can do. Unfortunately, like I said, if I did focus on all of them, it would take us like an extra hour. But I did publish a video. I believe it's called How to Revive Your Resume. It's one of my most recent videos. Maybe I did that a couple or 3 weeks ago or something like that. So if you go onto my YouTube channel, you will find it in the popular playlist. It's definitely in there, and I do recommend that you watch that, because I go through common resume mistakes and ways how you can help your resume stand out and make it more digestible and more readable in that short of a time span. So go check it out. Okay, so there are a couple comments about ageism. Guys, I mean, first of all, there is not really a clear question around it, or at least I haven't scrolled to it yet. I don't like, if you have a specific question around ageism, can you please type that in the comments? Because as a topic, just ageism in the workplace, I could talk about that for another extra hour. So is there anything specific that you want me to focus on within the topic of ageism? And if that's the case, please start typing your question. Okay. Another great question by Ken. I'm sure a lot of candidates are trying to transition from one field career into a new field. What advice can you provide as recruiters are looking for those with experience in the new sector? To successfully land in a new sector, what tips can you provide? So again, sorry, I'm just gonna hide the question so that you guys can see me well. So when it comes to transitioning to a new sector, obviously the challenge is that you don't have enough experience in that industry. So tip number one, focus on the transferable elements of your experience. Let me give you an example. If you work in customer service, so what you do, let's say you negotiate contracts with clients and you interact with clients to kind of nail down those contract terms. And then you're switching to a different industry. So obviously you're not approaching that same group or that same class of clients, but that skill of negotiating terms and negotiating agreements, that skill can be applicable to a lot of different areas. So instead of focusing, let's say, on your resume or on your LinkedIn profile, instead of focusing on the industry element, focus on the functional or the skillful, that's maybe not the right word, but I hope you get my point, the skill-related element of your experience and competencies. So that's number one. When it comes to your LinkedIn profile, for a lot of people, they're still thinking about LinkedIn profiles as their resume. So they will mostly focus on the past, meaning they would outline their previous roles and all of that, and do like in the about section, do a quick summary of what they've been up to. But they never really look towards the future. So if you are transitioning to a new career, you definitely need to incorporate those future or forward-looking elements in the text of your profile. That could be applied to your headline, so the tagline at the top, where again, you could highlight that transferable element and already create a value proposition statement oriented towards the new industry you're hoping to join. You could do the same thing in the same concept in the about section. So instead of just summarizing, 10 years of experience in this industry, focus on those like top 3 transferable elements and put them in the context of the new industry you're targeting. So that way you're kind of hitting 2 birds with 1 stone. Number 1 is, again, you're selling those transferable skills, right? And you're putting them forward on your LinkedIn profile for everyone to see. But at the same time, you're populating your LinkedIn profile with the keywords that are no longer applicable to the old industry. They are now applicable to the new industry. Because one tricky thing here is that you want recruiters or just generally people on LinkedIn from the new industry to somehow be able to find you. And the most basic step you can take to make that happen is to populate your profile with the keywords that are relevant to the new industry. Strategy number 3 is to start refocusing your network. So if the people in your current circle of connections and circle of contacts, and I mean both online and offline, if they are mostly from the same world that you come from, so let's say they are in the same if you work in, let's say, healthcare, most of the people that you know, they also come from the same industry. So now you need to really stretch the limits of your network. You need to start including people who are closer to that new sector that you're targeting. So one very simple, easy way to do this is to make a list of the people in your current circle that you want to catch up with and you maybe haven't spoken to in a while. And when you reach out to them, ask them to share one name of someone who either works in the new industry or can recommend someone who works in that industry. Because you might be surprised that, maybe the people that, like your immediate circle, maybe they're not necessarily exposed to that new industry, but they can know a ton of people who are. So that's the next strategy. I already lost count. Another pretty obvious thing would be to start reaching out to recruiters who are hiring in that new industry. So having some conversations with them, because sometimes recruiters, they know of opportunities that are not advertised elsewhere. So they have exclusive terms to be hiring for those opportunities. And on top of that, they're usually well connected in that industry. So they could connect you with more people. And even if they don't have an opportunity that is immediately available and you could be a good fit for, they could again share a couple of names, a couple of connections with you. So that way you're already growing, pretty much jump-starting that growth for your networking. So those are just a few points, and I hope that helps. Like I said, stay tuned for the video that I will be releasing next week about career change, and I'll be sharing some more tips and strategies and details in there. But just right now, for the sake of time, I'm going to move on to the next question. Okay. By the way, I'm loving your questions, guys. This is great. I'm already kind of, I know that we're probably not going to be able to cover all of them, but anyways, thank you for sharing those questions. Okay. Okay. Question from Sonji. There is so much that can be put in a cover letter. What are the must-haves for a cover letter submitted with a resume to apply for a job? That's actually interesting because, again, 2 weeks ago, I did a video on cover letters on my YouTube channel, and it's actually one of my most popular videos so far. So if you haven't seen it, I highly recommend it because I talk about cover letters for like 15 minutes, diving into all of the different details. But to give you a brief answer, first of all, you have to be mindful that when you're using your cover letter this way, when you're submitting it with a resume for an online application, the odds of anyone ever reading it are pretty low. The reason being that recruiters or HR people just don't necessarily get excited by a file called cover letter that is attached with your resume, because they know that in 90% of the cases it's going to be a very generic and boring letter. So my recommendation is to actually leverage your cover letter in a more productive way, which means using it as the text body of your email that you're sending out directly to the recruiter or the hiring manager. So when you're looking for ways to go around online applications, in that case, you're way more likely to actually, have your cover letter read as opposed to just attaching something that will never even get seen. But going back to the tactical piece, so what are the must-haves for the cover letter? The number one must-have is your motivation to join this company or to get this specific opportunity. Because unfortunately, a lot of people use very generic templates for cover letters. And the minute you open that cover letter up, you know right away that that could be sent to 100 other companies without tailoring it too much, and it would still be okay, meaning that it's never really personalized. So if you have a piece of information, let's say you did some research and you have a specific piece of information that is relevant for this company, maybe they appeared in the news, maybe they opened up a new brand, like a new department, maybe they entered a new market, maybe they introduced a new product, whatever it is. If you have that piece of information that is specific to this company, include that, because that makes your cover letter highly personalized, and employers and hiring managers especially always appreciate that. And by the way, between recruiters and hiring managers, it's actually the latter that are way more likely to not only read your cover letter, but also appreciate it. So don't get discouraged by everyone telling you that recruiters don't read cover letters anymore, because yeah, maybe they don't, but hiring managers still do. So the first must-have, that personalized piece of information. The other must-have for a cover letter is obviously your contact information. It needs to appear on there somewhere, and I always recommend to include that at the top of the letter. So doing like a letterhead that matches the formatting of your resume, so that those two files, they kind of go together. They are part of the same application and the same message. So you really want to keep that formatting consistent. So other than that, another possible must-have for a cover letter is a couple of highlights from your experience that speak directly to certain things that are required for this opportunity or for this job opening. The key here is not to just repeat or copy your resume, but to actually provide some additional information that adds more value or gives more detail and really connects it and nails it down to what is required for this specific opportunity. So think about one or two top highlights from your career, whether it's a specific project or just a role in general, and how you can kind of summarize that experience and really bridge it to what that company is asking for in the job posting. So that's where the job posting becomes like your main source of information. And finally, another must-have for a cover letter is a follow-up plan. So instead of simply saying, thank you for your time and consideration, and that's basically it, you can actually let the person know what your follow-up plan is. Meaning, if they don't reach out to you, maybe you mention that I'm gonna email you in a week to see if we can set up a time to continue our conversation. So that way you become way more proactive. And, in certain cases that may not work, but you sometimes need just one just one time for it to work. And usually that kind of a proactive approach in how you're willing to follow up and take charge of this process rather than simply sitting back and waiting, that can be a huge differentiator. There are maybe a ton of other details I could say about cover letters. So if you want to learn more, please go to my YouTube channel and check out that video. I think it's the video from last week, if I remember correctly. A ton of details on cover letters specifically. Okay. Question from Mosfera. If the interviewer doesn't accept the LinkedIn connection request prior to the interview, does it mean it's a negative indication? Not at all, because maybe the person just hasn't checked their LinkedIn profile in a few days. I mean, obviously, not everyone is active daily on LinkedIn, so I wouldn't take it personal. If, however, you already had the interview and they are still not accepting, maybe, like I said, maybe they're not that active on LinkedIn. So if you do follow up with them over email, which I highly recommend, you could mention that, I sent you a connection request on LinkedIn. I would appreciate if we kept in touch. If you ever open your LinkedIn profile, I would love to stay connected. I mean, something really quick and simple to let them know that you actually send that connection request. And also, if you want to kind of, do a little bit of a checkup and see if the person is at all active on LinkedIn, you can always go onto their profile, scroll down to the activity tab, and see every single step they've taken on LinkedIn within the few, recently, basically. So if you go on there and you see that they have commented 10 times today, but they haven't accepted your connection request, maybe they actually saw it, but they chose not to accept it. But if they haven't, shown any activity within a few days, and you also send them a connection request within that time frame, maybe they just haven't actually opened their LinkedIn profile, so don't necessarily take it personally. Okay. David is asking, what is your YouTube channel? So it's actually Anna Lokotkova, so my full name, basically. You can just type that in. And also, there are some of my YouTube videos that are attached on my LinkedIn profile. They're probably not the best ones yet, because I need to refresh that. Anyways, if you just type in my full name on LinkedIn, you will come across my channel for sure. And if you haven't subscribed already, you're welcome. I'll be happy to have you join my community, because the more you guys give me some feedback, the more it helps me to deliver better and more helpful content to you for free, which I think is a win-win. Okay. Question from Magdalena. Why many companies are looking for people with 2 years experience? I mean, even for a junior role, do you advise to apply for these offers or not? I mean, it's up to the company to decide how many years of experience they are looking for. One thing that I am going to say, though, is that even if you don't satisfy 100% of the requirements, so if you're not, let's say you don't have 2, but you have 1.5 years, or even if you have just 1 year, it is still worth applying. But in that case, you need a really good resume and a really good cover letter. And also, I mean, we're talking just about the online applications, and you also need a plan to reach out to someone at that company directly, because even if you don't meet all the requirements, but you can find a champion inside the organization who can forward your resume or say something great about your personality, about them knowing you, about something, about the way you approach the relationship with them or the connection with them, that can be a huge asset that can outweigh the fact that you do not have, the exact number of years of experience or that exact list of all the minimum requirements. Whether I advise you to apply for those jobs or not, I mean, like I said, it's worth applying if that looks like a really good fit for your skill set and for the kind of company you're looking for. The question is not whether you should or shouldn't apply, because you should. The question is what you do next. And doing next means looking for ways to go around that traffic jam of online applications, because that strategy is almost dead. I cannot say that it's dead 100%, because like some of my clients land interviews through online applications, but they have a really good resume and they come in really prepared. They do their homework, and even after submitting their application online, they have a proactive networking strategy in place. So they are proactively doing something extra, something going above and beyond to make that happen, rather than simply relying on online applications. So I think, Magdalena, my advice to you would be apply, but have also a backup strategy that actually needs to be the main strategy, because it's going to get you the most results. Okay. Question from Chelsea. Do you think an objective statement or initial statement at the top of the resume is still a valid use of space, or is there something better to start the resume with? Of course, after the name and contact info. Yes, there definitely is a much better way to start your resume than an objective statement. And sorry, I'm going to hide the question once again. The best way to start your resume is with a short summary paragraph that explains who you are, what you do, and how you can add value. That is because an objective statement usually focuses on what you are looking for or on what you want. Unfortunately, that's not the main priority for a lot of employers. Their main priority is what they are looking for and how you, with your background and your skill set, can help them make their goals happen or achieve their objectives. And that's what you need to focus on at the very top of your resume. Okay, let's see. There's a comment from Monica. I reached out to the hiring manager by using LinkedIn and emailing people. I received an offer and was asked to apply online. The application tracker told me that I did not meet their criteria. Try to bypass the application online and can close the door based on the tracker. Well, I really like your piece of advice about bypassing the online application process. And I feel like I've already said that like 20 times today, but I hope that if there's one thing that you're going to take away from today, if you're tired of facing dead silence in your job search, it's this, that you need to bypass the online application process. When it comes to reaching out to hiring managers using LinkedIn or emailing, here's the thing. So when you're reaching out to them and you're immediately asking for a job or referring to a job opening, that could be a big turnoff for a lot of people. So they would naturally direct you to their HR department or to that general procedure, because they have never met you before. They don't know who you are. And here, out of nowhere, here you are asking them to prefer you over someone else. I mean, there are certain occasions when that might work if the person is quite open-minded. I mean, the hiring manager or whoever you're sending to. If they're quite open-minded, sure. But if they find that awkward and they're not open to it, that having that initial ask right away can be a big turnoff. So that's why it's important to start networking before there's any job opening in mind. Or if there already is a job opening, there are two things how you can hopefully improve that situation a little bit. First, if you are reaching out to the hiring manager directly, don't mention the job right away. First, establish some initial connection. Ask them a quick question based on their profile, or ask them for a piece of advice as a more experienced professional in your field, or something that can create that quick back and forth conversation and wouldn't take more than 2 minutes of their time. Once you establish that reaction, so when the person is responding, then they already a little bit invested in the conversation. So that could be a much better time or stage in your communication to be referring to a specific job opening. And the second tip that can help you improve that situation would be to look for ways how someone else can refer you to the hiring manager, someone hopefully who works in the same company. So again, asking the hiring manager directly for the job may be challenging, but if someone else comes to them and says, hey, I can endorse this person. I think they are really good. I've spoken to them. They are proactive. They seem like the kind of people that thrive in here, that are going to make it, and they have so much knowledge to bring to the table. In that case, the hiring manager, I mean, you're not asking them for something, but there's someone else endorsing you. So that way, the quality of that kind of ask is completely different. So hopefully that helps. Okay. What can you say in a connection request to solicit a response? A question from Danielle. Do you recommend contacting a recruiter directly on LinkedIn or just employees at a company? I'm assuming, Danielle, that you mean the recruiter, the in-house recruiter of the company, so not a third-party recruiter from a recruiting agency. So to answer your second question first, I would say you could definitely do both. You could reach out to the recruiter directly and also to the employees at the company. Hopefully, what I just explained about that mechanism of someone endorsing you to the hiring manager, someone who is necessarily a recruiter, hopefully that gives you some context as to why it's important to reach out to employees of the company as well. But there's definitely no harm in reaching out to the recruiter, because you are looking for ways for them to single you out of a pool of maybe hundreds of other candidates. And if you reaching out can do that, why not? What can you say in a connection request? That's, first of all, you need to tell the other person why you're reaching out to them specifically. So, a lot of the times people would message me and say that they want to connect because they're growing their network and hoping to include more influencers in their network. So basically they're saying, hey, you have so many followers that it would be great for me to be exposed to your network. And I mean, I get the sentiment. I'm not under any illusions here, but it wouldn't hurt to give it some effort and to actually find something about, letting me know why you found my profile interesting or why you're interested in what I do. And it's especially easy to do with people who create content online. I mean, all you need to do is really read through one piece of their content and mention to them that you appreciate it, or even engage first with the post itself and then reach out to them directly. So, but if you're reaching out to someone who is not necessarily creating any content online, still open up their profile. I mean, it takes 2 to 3 extra minutes, look through it and find some common ground, find something that stands out and, lets them know why you're interested in their profile. So that's number one. Number two is, if you wanna, again, before you start throwing any huge request or huge ask at that person, you need to establish some kind of a initial connection or initial conversation. So don't put a big request right off the bat in that first connection request. If you have a quick question that, again, maybe you can give them like a choice of a few options that they can even get back to you with. Or you can just ask them a quick question that wouldn't take more than 2 minutes of their time to reply. I sometimes get those very quick questions from someone new, and I mean, it doesn't hurt me, or it doesn't take too much of my time and effort to get back to the person within 60 seconds. So why not? I'll do it, just because it's a very quick question and it's not something super broad or big. I also did a video about connecting with people on LinkedIn, so how to get more responses to your invitations to connect and your messages. And it's on my YouTube channel as well, so if you haven't watched it, I highly recommend it. I dive into a ton of details of very actionable and practical ways how you can get more responses on LinkedIn. Okay, unfortunately, guys, we're kind of running out of time, and I know that there are quite a few other questions. I'm just going to take one more from Samantha. What is your advice for applicants applying for roles that they are qualified for, but they do not have the required years of experience listed on the job description? So Samantha, some of the things that I mentioned earlier, I don't know if you heard some of my previous answers, but looking for ways to go around the straightforward online application would be key here. So the way how you can compensate for lack of the years or lack of some specific thing in the requirements list is to build a connection through your network and reach out to that person directly and, get your foot in the door this way. So, reach out to people, be proactive about it. And when you're reaching out to them, obviously, I'm just going to be repeating everything that I said 10 minutes ago, in terms of not overwhelming them with a big ask and all of those things. And at the end of the day, companies are listing those requirements because obviously they're hoping to get someone who has been exposed to all of those areas or has the required number of years or whatever. But at the end of the day, it's how well you can do the job. So in this case, if you don't have the required years of experience, but you want to prove that you're more than qualified to do the job, I would go for showing some proof and tangible example. So for instance, if you're reaching out to, so if you applied online and then you're reaching out to the recruiter or the hiring manager directly, send them not just your resume and a cover letter, but also send them a 2-slide presentation for your action plan. So you can let them know that you've done some research, you've learned something about their company, and you already put together some action plan of how you can apply what you know to their challenges and resolving their issues and helping them achieve their goals. So that way you're already taking it one step beyond the average, one step beyond everybody else. And that's a great way for you to stand out and compensate for the lack of the minimum requirements. Because like I said, companies don't always look for the list of requirements. They are also looking for a great fit, for a personality, for a certain type of personality, for a certain type of motivation and commitment. And, creating that tangible example is definitely a good way to showcase all of those things. So I think we're done with the questions for today. Guys, thank you so much for joining. I have one last question for you before we all go and continue with our day is, do you have ideas for other topics that you would like me to talk about? Because I'm planning to do these live streams pretty regularly. Like I said in the beginning, I do them every couple of weeks. And I'd love to cover the topics that you find most useful and helpful. So if you could type in the comments a few ideas for topics that you'd like me to cover in my next live streams, I'd be really grateful. And I'll definitely incorporate that to make sure that if we do meet again in the live format, that I cover the things that are most pressing, most challenging to you. So your feedback is always really, really valuable for me. If you have those suggestions, please start typing in the comments right now. And other than that, thank you so much for joining. I'm looking forward to your thoughts and ideas for topics. So don't be shy. Could be resumes, it could be networking, or maybe you have a very specific area that you'd like me to focus on. I know that a couple people mentioned about ageism in the workplace. So what exactly, what aspects of that would you like me to cover? Because I could potentially talk about that as well. Thank you everyone for joining. Really appreciate it. Stay well. Take care of yourselves, and I hope to see you again in one of these lives. And if you are still not following me on LinkedIn, welcome. Please feel free to reach out and connect. If you have any questions or if there's something that we were discussing today that wasn't 100% clear, you can always reach out to me directly. I'm happy to provide some additional resources or information. And if you're not yet subscribed to my YouTube channel, welcome, please. I would love to see all of you there and make even more engaging, fun, and useful videos for you guys so that you progress better in your job search. Okay, there are already some ideas for topics. That's great. If you have more, just keep typing, or you could also send me a direct message and let me know your idea for the next topics. Thank you guys. Have a great day, and I hope to see you again soon.